if you think about this in Jung's terms, he said as you start exploring your inner world, the first thing you meet are complexes, which are fragments of yourself that have an emotional energy and power attached to them. We need to treat those as people. And then you go in, you start meeting archetypes. The first round of the archetypes are pretty human in form, the great mother and stuff like. And you go farther and farther, these archetypes get weirder and weirder. You start seeing gods and demons and vast weird entities. So I think it's the same kind of journey as you explore this inner world, our subjective realm. There are things in there that are not part of you in your personal life history. The thing that most freaks out modern Westerners and most makes them want to pull their hair out and run screaming for the exits, we meet beings there who seem intelligent and agentic. That absolutely can't be. That really goes against materialism 100%. I want to put it this way because I get such a hard time about this ridicule and rejection. Uh, I'm old; it doesn't matter anymore. I want to put it this way. Maybe even the hardest headed listener might be willing to accept this, or at least entertain it briefly. There has been a basic biopsychological dynamic that we can find in pretty much every culture we have records of and every era of history. And this biopsychological dynamic can have huge effects on people, negatively or positively. The metaphor usually used to describe this is spirit possession. That's no longer an acceptable metaphor. Whatever we use to describe this, it's important and worthy of study. And this is the big contribution I think that modern psychotherapy can make to traditional spiritual techniques. We can help separate out all the stuff that's personal lifetime parts work from this stuff that's it's not personal anymore. It's something bigger and from the outside.
And then when we get to something that's even beyond legacy burdens, and I think the word you have for it is unattached
Yeah,
burdens. So,
I don't like that name, but that's what they call them in IFS.
and I don't want to ontologically pin you down, but just when I read about it, these parts of ourselves that are intelligent, but then almost barely even human sometimes. Not, it makes you think of demons. It makes
Yeah.
me think of it's their intelligences, but they're just not even necessarily harmful or wanting to hurt you, but just foreign even.
Some of them, a matter of fact, many of them, I think most of them are incredibly positive. It's all these people who experience guides, Christians who experience the presence of the Holy Spirit. There's deity yoga. There are all these oracles and shamans throughout the world have worked very, very hard to establish communication with these kind of beings because they feel they offer a portal or a doorway to a vaster intelligence. So I don't, yes, there's also a lot of demons and nasty stuff. And because I come at this from a therapy perspective, I get a great deal of that. But I think worldwide, it's way more positive than negative. And I want to give one more piece of evidence about that. With the psychedelic renaissance, um, in relatively high dose DMT containing psychedelics, which includes ayahuasca, psilocybin, a bunch of other stuff, major factor in psychedelics, many people meet what they call DMT entities. And there have been several international conferences on this, lots and lots of talk. It happens. And when Roland Griffiths at Johns Hopkins did big surveys of this, 80 plus percent of the people's they experience these as positive guides, wise ones, ancient beings. So, people go, oh, demon possession, and this is all horrible. I want to say, no, that it's all, well, yes, but also there's guidance, there's inspiration, there's creativity. All these poets and, you know, um, musicians, and this is, they felt they got their creativity from contacting these kind of realms. But there's this different question that we can reasonably expect to get some usable answers very quickly. And that's how best can we work with this? When someone is experiencing something like they're hearing voices inside their head that seem to come from a giant insect telling them to kill themselves, and that I've had people like that, how best can we help them? That's a very pragmatic, William James talked about radical pragmatism, and there are answers that we can get to in not in decades or centuries ahead, but fairly soon, as to what tends to help people like this more, and what doesn't work so well. So I've tried to stay focused on that radically pragmatic question. How can we help people who are having these kinds of experiences? For so many people, they get so weirded out by this whole idea. Things like this only have power in people when the people are scared of them. And when you're not scared of these phenomena anymore, they lose all power. I was working with a woman. I was actually supervising another therapist as a trainer, and this woman was there. He was working with, and it seemed that something was coming up in her that was not part of her. And what she saw in her inner world was a bloodshot eyeball. And the message it kept giving her was, you're garbage. You're garbage. You don't deserve to live. You're horrible. You're shit. You're worthless. On and on and on and on, in a very loud, screaming voice coming out of a bloodshot eyeball when she looked into her dream world. So we worked with those parts, got them calmed down a little. And then the way you can tell whether something like this is a part of a person from their own lifetime or something else, the parts of a person always have a good intention for the person. Even like a suicidal part, if it's a part of the person, if you ask it enough, well, what's good about killing her? Well, she won't be on the planet. What's good about her not being on the planet anymore? Then her suffering will be over. There's the good intention. That's a part of the person. We don't want to try and get rid of it. We can join with that good intention. We can say, oh, we want her suffering to be over too. And there's ways we can do it that won't involve you having to kill the body. Are you interested? Almost always the suicidal parts say, oh, I'd love it if you could do that, but you can't. There's no way you could do that. And we just say to it, would you pause enough and give us a chance to prove to you that we could? So that's, if it's a part, it has a good intention, you can join the good intention. If it's some external energy, it doesn't have a good intention. So we worked with this bloodshot eyeball. Almost everybody has a critic. And what's your intention? What's your intention? It just wanted to destroy her. It just, make her, make her suffer. No good intention. So then ask it, are you a part of me? For some reason, these things don't seem to be able to lie in response to that question, but only that question. And it didn't want to answer the question. It said stuff like, that's a foolish question, or you wish I was a part of you, all this BS. And then at one point it said through her to me, you're supposed to be a teacher. That's a really stupid question. And I said, well, it may be stupid, but it's simple. Are you a part of her? And then it finally sort of roared out inside her head, no, I'm not a part of her. She's a miserable little worm like you, and I'm going to crush you both. That's some kind of external energy with no good intention whatsoever. And we were able to get that out of her system and gone. And then she sent me an email that changed my life. She said, Bob, I didn't tell you this, but when I was young, I tried to kill myself many times and was locked up many times. And back then, when I tried to tell people about the non-human inside of me, they gave me electroshock and injected me full of horrible drugs. You're the first human to believe me, and you have changed my life. And I went, I can't ignore this. It's really inconvenient, unpleasant, shatters my worldview. It doesn't fit, but hey, if I could help this woman change her life with, in yeah, I need to be open to this being real. It's not like an exorcism or a deliverance. It's not combative or confrontive. uh, I don't think there's much need for that. I think most often, maybe always, these things are just lost suffering and they cling on to people out of desperation and starvation. And we don't need to fight them. We just need to help them get free. And when a person is no longer afraid of them and no longer wants them around for any reason, they don't seem to be able to stay. And getting into these big exorcist battles with them, I think makes it harder and does a lot of damage to the person. I want to say one more thing, and this is even a more radical idea than everything we've been talking about so far. I don't mind is multiple. That's what we've been talking about with this part model. We are not one unified thing. We are a system of interrelated beings. We're more like an ecology than a single organism. I think there's overwhelming evidence for that. Even a weirder or more radical proposition is that not only that, but our minds are porous. We take in things from our environment and give things out. Every living system is encapsulated by a semi permeable membrane, every single one. Why would our minds be different?